Hello. Welcome to the third discussion group for Ulysses by James Joyce. We are kind of known as the Ulysses Six.
Trademark it now.
Yes. So this is going to be pretty much confined to chapter 15. This is the longest chapter of the book. I don't know if it's the strangest chapter or the most difficult one, but it's certainly a bizarre chapter. And I'm going to let Alan take over an early lead discussion because he's read this book a number of times before and has a pretty clear idea, as I understand, what's going on in this chapter.
Well, I'll kick us off. How's that?
Okay.
So, it's where to start, huh? I mean, I kind of want to start with Bloom's potato. We could start with, or he loses his potato finally, or the.
Alan, pretend you're a college professor. We're your students. You're teaching us.
Okay, well, it's I think they say it's more of a hallucination than a dream. It's like a hallucination in Bloom's mind. He's racked with guilt. All his guilt stuff comes up. I think that's apparent. His guilt over his dead son, Rudy, and his father's suicide comes up. And, the guilt that's chased him all through the novel about Blaze's Bolin and, his rendezvous with Molly. He's become a cuckold. What time is it now? It's like midnight, right?
Midnight.
Midnight, yes. So Stephen is left like is drunk and left the hospital with Lynch and some others there, and some ended up in Nighttown, and Bloom followed him in there. But there's always a tension about them meeting. They still don't really interact much in this whole entire episode. So I was wondering if you guys are thinking, when are they going to ever, we're almost done
Do
with
they ever? I mean, well, I guess it's a spoiler. Do they ever actually? Meet?
But I want to hand it to everyone for sticking with the novel and making it this far. And more does get revealed. And my favorite episode is Ithaca 17. I mean, almost every other episode, I say, it's my favorite one. But all will be revealed in Ithaca.
It's not all, though, fantasy, is it? It's not all in his head. It switches between reality and the fantasy. Right. And sometimes it took me a little while to realise, this bit's real.
Like maybe with the private, the cops, Stephen and the cops and that.
Yeah, and also paying for the prostitutes.
Right. Bloom make sure Stephen doesn't get ripped off or taken advantage of.
I find
it's easy to see why Stephen's so skint, isn't it? I mean, he picked up his wages right at the beginning of the book, and then he virtually threw them at Bella later the same day. That was, all his wages almost that he handed over there.
For people hallucinating and being drunk, I was surprised at the shift of that to the specificity of Bloom very quickly doing mental arithmetic and knowing how much is the appropriate much. If I give you this back and then you give me £1 back, then we're even.
Yeah.
But there's one thing about that, Will. I can't do English money sober.
Well, it's not even. It's not English money now, is it? Even because it's set then. I assume I don't know if it was the same in Ireland, but obviously you got pound, shilling, and pence.
I think they did. Yeah.
When I was there in the 90s,
I always felt really ripped off because I learnt that system, which is very complicated, with the 12 pence and then the 20 shillings and stuff. I learnt all that. Then they bring in the metric system, which any fool can do. It's like, what a waste. I knew the real money.
Now the euro.
Well, England is back off the euro, right? I guess we're getting off
We've
topic.
never been on it, man.
Yeah.
We're still.
Just before we leave the topic, Joyce has on the tenner. There's a Joyce tenner, $10, £10. I mean, note in Ireland, and there's controversy on it because if you take the back of the bill and fold it, the back is like Health Castle, but if you fold it right and turn it upside down, it looks like a phallus. It's really wild. It's like a collector's item. I think they stopped making them, but I'll have to Google that. I should have.
That seems quite appropriate for this episode.
It
I thought it was really crude, this episode, I thought.
It does go into real depths of subconscious sexual stuff, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
To the point of being quite painful, I thought.
Yeah.
It's like everything's laid out, you know.
Yeah, and you're thinking, okay, that's enough. I've got the message now. You can stop with the sex stuff.
It was more explicit than the alleged fireworks scene for getting it.
I thought
I was thinking,
that seemed quite tasteful.
Yeah,
it's
like that was at least disguised with metaphor and non-discrete metaphor, but still metaphor. Whereas this is just at one point when is it Bella then turns into Bello?
Yeah,
he's just tormenting Bloom endlessly in this vicious tirade. I was thinking, this is way worse than that seedy scene from previous. That was just seedy. This is actually into the sadism and masoching arena.
It goes into character. I mean, it goes into just his sense of guilt that he is feeling emasculated and unable to be a man in society. So, in his, we'll just say, flips the positions. You know.
I thought there was a weird, very weird strain throughout it all of a mix of déjà vu and déjà rêvé, which is like just living through a dream that you've already had before, mixed with whatever the inverse of dramatic irony is. So not only this was the first time I felt we knew more than the characters, but there are elements, and I've like bookmarked them in here, where the characters are saying things about other characters that seem to be truths that I don't know how they would know. So I think I've got it as. Sorry, this will take me a second to find it.
Yeah, go ahead. I like that.
Where is it now? Sorry, I think it's the bit with Gertie and the board and Bloom. You leave the gentleman alone, says the board. You cheat, writing the gentleman false letters. Street walking, soliciting.
The numbers?
So that's 380 in mine. Which I think is just interesting, is that Gertie's being accused of writing. There's a correspondence with Bloom, which I don't know is just a weird parallel to the correspondence Bloom's already got going.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I assume we know it's not Goethe, but I don't know on that. And then there are just instances of truths coming out that I don't understand how they would know what the truth is.
So it's going beyond being stream of consciousness within one person's head at the time.
Yeah,
kind of going between in some
because then there's
hard to follow way.
Yeah, I've also got on 770. There's another play on words of shibboleth. I'm pretty sure it's meant to be shibboleth, but the phrase is actually shibboleth. But that's obviously a password in Christianity, isn't it, for proving you can be trusted and you're allowed in. And then there's just other characters who say that's not my real name. My real name is actually, I can't remember where it is now, Peggy. Somebody confesses that their real name is actually Peggy and not the other person. So I don't know how Bloom knows that information.
See, I just my opinion is that none of that is really reality. That is Bloom's interpretation that there is something outside of himself. All this is just a big play in Bloom's head, as I saw it. And
I think it's accidental truth, though. I think that's what we're getting. I think that's what we're getting here. We're getting everybody's cards laid bare on the table.
Now, I agree that it's like all in Bloom's head, but then I start thinking about it. He's the one who said out to drink. You know.
Yeah, and he's relatively sober compared to the rest of them.
Yeah, I find that kind of hard to. But
I mean, right at the beginning when he's following them towards the brothel, you get the 4-year-old twins playing around, and I'm thinking,
Mhm.
what are they doing there?
Yeah, are
What are
they
they doing
Bloom's
there? 'Cause
memory
it's
from earlier, like in a dream?
exactly. So he's transposed them, and also
He does that a lot with. I think every episode you could safely say appears again in Cersei.
yeah.
You know, in some manner.
That's why I
For
think
sure.
it counts as that deja rêve instead of deja vu, because he's
Mm.
mixing dream, he's mixing dream and reality, and recapitulating them again in a different fashion.
Yeah.
But with his worst elements coming out rather than, because I know it already went badly with Gertie and the twins in that scene anyway. But
Mm.
it's just it's ramped up a notch, and it was very much. I've not read much Shakespeare, but it felt like it got to the 12th Night kind of element, where it was this very fantastical. There's the nymph, and it's almost going to like a fey realm of imagination, and it's just
Yeah.
very surreal. Like at any moment, you'd expect the king of the forest to appear, and it's. I was just picturing that type of not the 12th Night. Sorry, is it the Tempest? Just very magical, almost at certain points.
Mm. I'm also unsure as to. I mean, I can see Bloom is looking after Daedalus because he doesn't have a son of his own to look after. But am I wrong in thinking that he barely knows him? He knows his father more than he knows him, doesn't he?
Yes.
Right. He knew his father and he knew his mother, because he looks at Stephen's face at one time and he sees the dead Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think he knew the parents more than he knows Stephen, it would seem.
But he still feels this paternal compulsion to keep an eye on him.
Yes.
Yeah, he knows Simon Daedalus. They both, were in Hades.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they're in that episode, and Simon Daedalus has a reputation all around town as being, a poor father or bad father, an alcoholic. He'd rather drink than give his daughter Gilly money.
Yeah, she knew he had more money than he was admitting to having on
Yeah.
his person.
It does seem though like Bloom needs to feel as though he is doing some good in the community.
Yeah.
I mean, he trundles along to what's her name's when she's in labour in the hospital.
Right.
Didn't quite get that.
Yeah.
Now he's decided that he's going to parent Stephen because Simon doesn't do it properly, and it's just it shows his character, I think. And yet you've got the seedy side as well. He's a real contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
As a character, Bloom is. Yes, indeed.
I saw him almost as, like, I didn't know what to make of all of these hallucinations either, but it felt like he was moving toward a different position by the end of the episode. Something that he hasn't allowed himself to be or to feel all through the day, and maybe for the last 11 years, since he lost his son. And he hasn't allowed himself to see himself as a father, or because I think he feels responsible for Rudy's death. And he can't entertain the possibility of another child either, because he doesn't deserve that, because he's responsible for killing his first child, which of course is all in his head.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost felt like he's feeling these things for Stephen. I don't know why, because I don't know what the connection is, but he's starting to have these paternal feelings and allow himself to have, like he even says, I don't know why I'm following him. Why am I following? But he's feeling something that he didn't know he could feel. But before he can really do that, he has to go through this horrendous dark night of the soul, where he goes through every single, horrible thing that he has done or that has happened to him. And he goes through all these terrible hallucinations. And then at the end of it, I mean, he does do some very assertive and upright and almost heroic things.
Yeah.
He pays for Stephen. He he puts those women in their place for trying to take more money from him.
Yeah, you've got the bit about the damage to the chandelier, and he's not having any of it.
Right. So he does feel, he seems a little different at the end of this. Like he's gone through all this. I don't know. I mean, I may be saying too much, but he's gone through this horror and this terror and all of these defenses that he's erected for the last 11 years. And he comes out slightly at a different place. And the last hallucination is almost like a reward because he gets Rudy back at age 11. And that doesn't seem like a painful hallucination for him. I think he's overjoyed to see his son in the final hallucination.
And Pat, what you're saying is curious because Joyce is the kind of author who strongly pays attention to a structure of a novel, as well as chapters.
Sure.
And it's no coincidence, I think, that he ends this at the end of part 2. This is, like it's part of the journey. The first part, really, the journey begins. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not, Al, you said you read it so many times. Just stop me when I go down the wrong path. Okay. Part 1 is the journey begins. Part 2 is the journey. And if we were to go back to Odyssey, this is when Odysseus comes home.
Yeah. Yes.
Back on Ithaca is the end of the chapter.
Yep, he's going
now,
home.
How do I confront my done journey?
Yes.
And that's all that big. I mean, I listened to that. Hold on.
I wanted to.
The great courses, like I don't know how much of this is I forgot because I listened to that great courses a week ago. It took me all week to finish this chapter, but I think that's where I'm going with it. Is that it's like now let's see what Bloom does. Mm-hmm. He's the hero. He's got to fix this situation, but fix it in a way that's within lines of Harold Bloom and not necessarily Ulysses.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to, before we go to that and the homecoming and that, and why, I thought it was a curious fact that Stephen was 11 years old when Rudy died 11 years ago. If you think about all the 11s going on. And I getting back to like Deb's question and that about like why is he so in Pat yours too and everyone's like why is Bloom so drawn? I think it's pretty apparent, with his son and then Molly and being a couple and being lonely, and he's in search of like a project or something. But
it's almost like he's trying to fix other people and avoiding fixing himself and what's wrong in his own life.
Identity or
well, isn't it sort of the Odyssey too?
Yes.
Because the Odyssey is always Odysseus, not going back to Ithaca to confront his own problem.
Yeah.
He takes, well, that one, it took, 17 years?
And it's curious that, like, in the Odyssey, it's Odysseus that is unfaithful. He's the unfaithful one. And his wife Penelope is more faithful to him, but
well, we've already had some gender swapping in this chapter, so
it really gave me the feeling of Myra Breckenridge, or almost in that sense of there's a big flip around with the gender swap, and then there was that thing of who's doing what to who, and is it worse because you're now in the other position than you were previously. I think Bloom's hero element, as you said at the end, is, I would say, is hero with a lowercase h, because the rest of it is a very long rap sheet of a lot of wrongdoings.
Yeah.
Oh,
which
yeah.
which I think again is weird that the Jewishness is put upon him so much by all the other characters, and he is an outcast. But I think if everybody else is even partially aware or peripherally aware of Bloom's rap sheet, as they may or may not be, depending on how true the hallucinations are, I'm not surprised people might treat Bloom a bit like he's a bit weird because he is a bit weird.
Uh-huh.
So there's that. You're almost walking that tightrope there of, again, I don't know what characters believe fully and what they know to be true.
Oh yeah, he got it bad in that Cyclops episode, didn't he? He chased out of the pub.
There was
It's
some
weird. It's
really
weird. Sorry.
Sorry, off you go.
I was just going to say, I mean, I think we're all agreed that some real things happen during this chapter.
Right.
So there is a progression of actual action interspersed with these massive, long hallucinations. And the hallucinations seem to take ages. You know, it's not like somebody just getting a little impression or an image while they're going about their business. It's like a massive flight of fantasy. So when or whether those actually happen in the experience of the characters, you know, does Bloom actually think, God, it's like I've phased out there for 15 minutes and all these things happened and it's only been a second?
Yeah.
Or is it just you don't care about that because it's actually happening in some sort of super narrative world?
I didn't think that, because obviously if it doesn't work within the context of what the actual story is it actually a part of the story then, or are we just actually cutting to an elsewhere and Tramador 3, 4 or whatever it is? We're just gonna view some aliens for a bit, but this is happening in the same timeline, but we're just going elsewhere completely surrealistically.
Yeah, because all those parody sections in the chapter everybody hated, was it 14? Those can't have actually happened. You know, people weren't actually hearing 5 pages of sort of satirical verse or sort of that kind of thing. It's kind of happening in the book. Maybe this is the same.
Was anybody else surprised by how accurate the language was for it being an hallucination? Because I thought it was so detailed and so specific.
Not for Joyce.
No, I don't mean necessarily not from the point of view of it being Joyce, but I mean if you keep it to Joyce, if you go, we're in a hallucination now, he didn't then take what I would assume would be anybody else's hallucination and ramp it up to a Joyce level. It was actually that's pretty normal, I suppose. The descriptions are weird and the scenes are weird, but it didn't go to 11 within the hallucination, if that makes sense.
It goes from perhaps Bloom is known as being a womanly man. You know, he's empathetic. He likes art. He likes the finer things of life. You know, but he's not like a big hell-raising beer drinking footballer. You know, so I just got a kick out of all that, like sex is theater, and when Bloom was dressed in drag, it was like a school play.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it does get graphic and intense and kind of grotesque, even. But I found it humorous too.
There's a very big Freud section, I thought, as well, which is in mine. Just to clarify on mine, because I think this was the difference I had with everybody else. You've all got the same edition. I thought I had the same edition as well, but I've got omitted lines in a particular section where I've got like a contracted version of it. So I don't know if that's the same for yourselves.
Really?
So mine from row 1910 to 1920, I have 1910, 1913, 1918, and 1920. I don't have blocks of 10 there.
Oh, is that what you meant in that comment?
Oh, right.
Hold on.
Which I don't know if I've missed completely throughout the rest of the book, that there are sections where there are gaps by row number.
I don't have row numbers in my edition.
Okay. So it's roughly...
You're right, though. I mean, in this one, it jumps directly from 1913 to 1918.
So I don't know if we're deliberately then being shown off narrative and by row number. This has been taken out. I don't know if that's how they're highlighting that in an edit at some point. This bit was maybe with Joyce's instruction. take that part out, but we'll keep.
I never noticed that before. Yeah,
this is curious. I read this and I did not pay attention. I normally don't pay attention to the row numbers, but in mine it goes 1910, then it skips, shows 1913, 1918, and then 1920.
yeah.
And I haven't counted. Maybe 11, 12.
Do you know, from what I've learned from Joyce, from reading this book, it could easily be something that he did on purpose just to add another dimension to it.
That's what I put in our chat. I don't know if it was because there is some activity, obviously, around the area of the First World War.
Yeah.
Where 1918 is conscription.
Yeah.
Happens. So I don't know if he's just telling some, like very much like in Les Mis, where Victor Hugo goes, I'm not going to tell you the story for a second. I'm actually just going to wax about French politics for a second.
Yeah.
And it's not the actual story anymore. I didn't know if he was just there going, this is just a parallel.
I can't wait to show you guys who were reading this edition, the Gabbler, the like typo coming up in Ithaca, but we'll save it for the end of the month. But
Alan, what makes you think I'll spot a typo?
I mean, I didn't spot it either. It's more than a typo. It's an anomaly kind of, and I didn't notice it until somebody pointed it out to me recently, within the last couple of years. But it's kind of like what Will pointed out. But those are all on the 5, so I think that's just he's counting line numbers. But
you see, I wasn't even sure. I didn't even assume that those line numbers were Joyce. I just assumed that was the publisher making it easier for readers.
Yeah,
it could be.
The book, you need to be able to point reference to this book.
Yeah, it could be. But I just don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that Joyce threw that in there deliberately, because
just said to them, "Can you just screw with the numbers here a little bit for me?"
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm looking in the collection of annotations,
right?
And that actually lists all of the missing numbers, and it lists texts that we don't have in this book.
Oh, okay. So who removed them?
So, for instance, like where we just said it goes from 1913 to 1918.
Yes.
If you look at in the book of annotations, it tells you what was on 1914, 15, 16, and 17. And these are all words and names, and they're not in the text.
So did Joyce edit it and remove those things?
Or is that just accidental publisher making a mistake?
I don't know.
Do you think it might be real names? Because there's that thing like usually in older text where you get the place name of a certain place, it will just do like an M dash, won't it, to omit an actual thing.
Yeah.
So if at some point Joyce is already going through a scandal of sexual revelation within the story, if he's also then in a paragraph said, and I'm specifically going to name these members of the active clergy at the moment or whatever it is, they've gone, actually, we're going to avoid libel here and just redact.
I mean, it says here 1914, which we don't have, right? We go from 1913 to 1918.
Yes.
And it says 1914, Don Emile Patricio, Franz Rupert, Pope Hennessy.
Hennessy. I'm with you, yep.
This collection of names suggests, but does not specify, several wild geese families, such as the Tafts in Austria, the O'Donnells in Spain, the O'Briens in Russia, the McMahons in France. Sir John Pope Hennessy, 1834 to 91, a conservative Irish Catholic politician, had a varied career as governor of several British colonies and was a successful anti-Parnellite candidate for Parliament in 1890.
Interesting.
Now I'm looking at my 1922 edition now too to see if it's in here. Go. Continue though.
Then 1915, 2 wild geese volant for wild geese C3 163. Volant in heraldry means in flight.
Sorry about that.
1916, Footboden, anglicized German for floor, or The Ground at Your Feet.
Yeah.
1917, Jude, in context, not the New Testament writer of the Epistle of Jude, but slang for Jew. None of that is in this text.
It doesn't seem bad enough to warrant being
It
exiled.
certainly doesn't seem libelous.
I think, I mean, this is just my assuming, is that who was ever printing the book, you know, just wasn't paying attention.
Maybe.
But it hasn't been. The editions you are reading now it's a very recent edition, isn't it?
Well, mine's different. I mean, you've all got the Gabler, and mine's described as the Garland edition, but has what's his name involved? Hans Walter Gabler involved. But
at no point have they put those omitted lines back. Then
I'm looking at the 22 edition, and the pagination is all off. I'm clear on it now. Let's see. Bloom, thank heaven. Yeah, this is totally different. The 22 edition is different too.
That's weird.
But they said pretty much up until it was published fully, he was still making corrections, wasn't he, over the course of a couple of years? And he also corrected wildly from memory as well. I've read as a description of him. He didn't have manuscript to hand. He was just rewriting as he kind of thought in the moment it should sound better. So maybe he has just gone through it. Just take that out.
Maybe.
It was printed in Paris, so the printmakers didn't read or write English. It's just a total mess. You know, Joyce, can you imagine Joyce trying to correct the galleys? He's going blind, and I mean,
can you imagine having all this stuck in your head?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like 15. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's my whole idea. Now, I wanted to get back. Is this an effective way for her to carry the story on in this chapter? I mean, is it?
No.
I thought it was kind of a curious example, but I think he really took it overboard. I mean,
so do I. Yeah.
I mean, it was 146 pages long. I think he could have done it in the normal, which is like 20, 30 pages a chapter.
But it seems to have been a pivotal chapter for him, because he then went back and rewrote previous episodes to add in things that he'd put in this episode. So for him, it does appear to have been a very key episode. But I thought it was overwritten.
Yeah, it's sort of like it sort of does the whole book over again.
Yeah.
In a weird, like it's taken everything that's happened already and thrown it in a bit of a blender.
Yes.
And now we're getting it served up again in this crazy way.
Yeah. And it was almost like I didn't understand it the first time. I'm certainly not going to understand it if you do it like this.
Yeah, it's funny.
Is it very much like I've not read it yet, but I've got it and I've read the beginning. Is it Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveller? Where
I haven't read that.
It's the story inside the story, and it's just like a series of roundels, and you're just dribbling down and keep going down a rabbit hole.
Oh right, yeah, it could be.
But yeah,
it just, I don't know. It just seemed a bit unnecessary, almost.
But it's curious now. We keep talking about how pivotal it was for Joyce. It's like this is my understanding of Bloom. This is his head inside my head, and I have to get him out onto the page. And if we're to be honest, sometimes our own internal thoughts, if we were to actually put them on paper, what we thought to go to lunch, what is in your head?
Yeah, I actually do that. I sit and write things first thing in the morning. I sit and write things down, and I never read it back because it's a lot of utter bollocks. You know, it's me venting. It's me almost clearing my brain out, and this almost felt like that. It was just getting rid of everything of Bloom.
I
mean, it's
I-
Nighttown, isn't it? It's that Nighttown sounds like it's a sort of subconscious or something like
Very
that.
much
That's
so,
when
yeah.
Oh,
you
absolutely.
let things go. It's
But there was
nighttime.
some-
It's after work. You drunk your beer, and
Load your journals out.
I've been known to write some things down too. These are
Yeah.
like maybe like half of my journals. They're all composition mead notebooks.
Yeah,
I use
I've
you
got
know,
a pile of those on the bookshelf upstairs.
years and years of journaling and dream. I'm writing down dreams and stuff,
Mm.
shit like that. I think I'm going to go back to it and look at it. Haven't yet.
Oh, I think if anyone looked at mine, they'd think I was insane.
well,
Yeah.
Debs and Alan, just publish it and call it Ulysses 2.
Yeah,
Shoot.
it makes as much sense.
No.
There were some bits in this episode
I
that
mean,
I thought were actually horrendous. And that was, I mean, the main one was the bit about the hanging of the croppy boy. I mean, that was a hideous piece. There were things coming out of him all over the place from every orifice. And
Yeah.
I didn't get what that was about.
I think there are parallels that are being drawn that would probably make sense to somebody of living in that time who would know. If that's a parallel to like a news story at the time, or something along those lines, where you'd be aware of some type of horrific hanging taking place or whatever, isn't that person
Do
was
you
left?
think this was something about the Irish nationalist movement?
Because they were hung?
Yeah.
Possibly.
I wouldn't doubt it. You know.
I was thinking
I
more
thought the
of it
whole
being
thing.
a kind of inversion of the whole semen, and we've had semen, we've had
Yeah.
stuff about life and birth, and
Yeah.
now that kind of in a horrible way inverts all of that, so you're getting death creating that semen stuff.
And we have to remember is that in
Jenny's like, I'm
time
so glad I'm not reading this book.
that executions were public.
Yes.
And it used to be like a Sunday event. Oh, let's go down and see the poor sods getting hanged this week.
Yeah.
Bring the kids.
But I found that passage quite horrific.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember where that was in it?
Yeah, is there a note on that, Pat? Are you looking for?
No, I wasn't looking for that. I can look, but I need a line
It was
number.
relatively near the end. I've just got
The crappy boy just hung.
I've got no episode numbers. I've got no line numbers. I've got no nothing. So in the edition that I'm reading, so it's quite difficult sometimes to find where things are. But it was near the end.
I think I found it 13. Well, I'm in 13. Another.
And it was when they just before they were talking about the bleeding fucking king, the hemophiliac womanizer.
Mm.
Oh, when Bloom becomes the king of Ireland.
Yeah.
Arthur Griffith.
Very good. When they title it Bloomville, but it's a bit clunkier than Bloomville. It's got a weird.
Yeah. Do you know one of the things in Ulysses that I thought was strange to start with, but I actually quite enjoy, is the way he smashes words together. And initially I thought he was just removing the hyphens from hyphenated words and pushing those together. But he isn't, is he? Sometimes you get this really long word. I mean, the thing like...
Yeah, like Nighttown, for example. Yeah.
Faithful.
No, he has some that are like 6 words,
just smushed together.
And I the first time I did that, I had to stop. And I go, why? What is this? And you sound it out and you figure it. And then it's really bizarre when it was today, you had some chorus that chanted some sort of prayer backwards.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay, well, what is it? I had, you know, reading and listening to my audiobook. I had to stop the audiobook because, you know, that just goes on. And
there's a Gnostic mass in here, yeah.
What is he getting there? Now, a lot of times when he goes into Latin, I just say, okay, I can't do the Latin. Let that go. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the most important Latin phrase I think is in Ulysses and portrait too is non serviam. You know, non serviam. I will not serve. That's the last words of Lucifer. That's what he said that got him kicked out of heaven, and that's what basically Joyce said too in real life. You know, he's not gonna. It's when he turned his back on Catholicism.
Do you think with the compound words is Joyce trying to, in English, do the equivalent of things like Schadenfreude in Germany, where it's like rejoicing in someone else's misery? He's trying to create a new meaning out of a contracted other
Quite
series
possibly,
of words.
yeah. That's a really good
Sometimes,
thought.
for sure. Yeah.
Because he's trying to say, Germany has it. I know. I remember thinking in the West Wing, the TV program, where they talk about, and in Korea they have a Han, which is just a 3-letter word, but it means like the overwhelming sorrow the entire nation feels encapsulated in this tiny word.
Wow. Whereas Germans just extend and extend and extend until
yeah. All that black math stuff is at 15.4689. It starts around there. By the way, for whoever's watching this in 2030.
All of our many students.
Right.
That's right.
I did like it. Well,
I get more hits on like my old Faulkner videos than I do on last week's tag. But
well, out of curiosity, is the first discussion the video had like 100 and something view? It was kind of almost 200 views. It kind of shocked me. Last week we were down like 80 or 90 views, which is more in line with what I thought. And I'm guessing this one is going to get 60.
You might be surprised.
Yeah, I agree with Alan. I think it'll be the type of thing that will grow over time because
it will, because people will be having to read their Ulysses class. I haven't read it.
Papers.
Listen to these Ulysses 6 talk about it.
I'd love to be in a footnote somewhere in somebody's essay or thesis.
Yeah.
It'd be great, but you know something? I think those are the kind of people that say, this is too obscure, the professor will never know. So what we have to do is come up with really obscure, unique thoughts about Ulysses. And then they'll put it in the paper and you say, student, I know it's Ulysses.
Well, I've got one. I don't want to spoil Ithaca, but wait till we get to Ithaca. I've got an idea where Bloom escapes from Ulysses to appear in the exact center of Finnegan's Wake. Right? Finnegan's Wake.
So
I prove it through algebra.
Because I've only read Dubliners as the only other Joyce I've read. So is this the same thing as Faulkner's? I can't pronounce it. Yaphanaka County or whatever.
Yaphanaka County.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Is it a shared universe then, essentially?
A world, sure. Yeah. Definitely.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yaphanaka County. Yes.
Now, the one thing is, I have read Dubliners twice, and I have listened to the audiobook of A Portrait of an Artist of a Young Man. And both those were relatively normal books compared to Ulysses. And it's really, when he picked up this one, that he says, I'm reinventing the way to do the novel. And I'm just kind of curious. Now that we're more than about two-thirds of the way through, how is this working as a novel for people? Is it a good novel, or is it really just an exercise on how to read and understand what's happening? I'm the latter. I don't think it's a good novel. Just because it's just way too experimental and...
If Joyce's attempt at reinventing the novel, it didn't really catch on, did it? There haven't been many more like this. And I think there's a reason for that. Because I agree with you, Greg. I think for me, this is an exercise in reading something that I know is going to be difficult. I didn't embark on it with the idea that I would actually enjoy it so much that I would want to read it as many times as Al.
It's fair enough.
I'm in that same camp. I think it was very a la mode at the time to do. So obviously Virginia Woolf did it, and I think did the stream of consciousness type of concept well. I know George Orwell did it in A Partisan's Daughter. There's like a scene in the middle of a town centre, and he said he tried it, and he thinks it worked, but he didn't like it personally. I know H.P. Lovecraft did it in some of his works as well, but again said as an experiment in the craft, I've done it, but I don't think it's the best and most conducive way to tell a story.
To be fair, we're not done with the novel yet. We're just in the homecoming. As we mentioned starting out, we're just in the final stretch. And a lot of great novels wait till the end to really,
I will give it that. I said, how's it going so far?
Yeah.
So far, it's like, well, this is the last act coming up.
And something captured me about, it's my heritage. I'm Irish on both sides. I don't know what made me so enamored with it at a young age, or why. I like puzzles. I like difficult.
Well, Alan,
yeah,
I think you just said something. You like puzzles. You like working things out.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was going to say it was Alan saying it's the young age thing. I think I've always been of this opinion. I know there's probably more prolificness in this recognition, I think, from an American audience, but American readers at a young age overwhelmingly seem to say like it's something along the lines of I read The Catcher in the Rye and it just caught my attention completely. I think some things when you read it young enough and you're impressionable enough, you will give it a bias and go, this is the best thing I've ever read. And you get to that, especially with this, I think you get that feeling of you're very, not that you're cool by association, but you can take on that thing of like, I've read Ulysses and I get it, but you don't get it.
But I read this last when I was 24 years old, and it was an incredibly powerful experience. I think I've told this to Alan. I was dreaming about this book when I was reading it as a 24-year-old woman in graduate school, and that had never happened to me before, where I dreamt about a book. I was like living this book. For me, that summer, I was grieving. My eldest brother had just died, and my father had died right before that. And I was in a terrible, mental state. And I was finishing up graduate school. And the grief in here of Stephen dealing with the guilt over the loss of his mother, and Bloom for 11 years punishing himself for the loss of his son. That's what made this, for me, I think, this earth-shattering experience. Now I'm reading this, more than 40 years later. I'm a person in my mid-60s, and I'm not having an emotional experience, except Greg occasionally to want to throw it across the room. I'm not in touch with my grief the way I was as a 24-year-old. And I don't mind reading long books, and I don't mind reading difficult books, and I love difficult books, but I want a narrative. I want to be able to follow. I want to get into the story and follow it. And I'm having such trouble. No, it's not plot driven at all. And it is character driven, but in such a sort of unconscious way. We're in people's unconscious, and that's not a world I'm uncomfortable with, but that's not what I want when I'm reading a novel. And so I've had the experience of being a young person reading this and being blown away by it, intellectually but emotionally, powerfully emotionally. As a mid-60-year-old woman,
not so much.
not so much. And this is my third read, but I'm struggling.
I think it's kind of the antithesis. Is that the right word? Antithesis, or like the opposite of? I'd put this completely opposite, like the Lord of the Rings, in that there's in the extreme of movement versus action in one and the other. There's a lot of movement in the Lord of the Rings and not very much action, really.
Yeah.
But then in this, everything's action. But the movement, the story can be condensed to the one line of the one paragraph describing the day, really, isn't it? It's just goes there, is a cuckold, visits a house of ill repute at night, and then you're quite near the end of the story. The actual plot is very
thin.
Yeah, but with lots of underlayers underneath. But then those underlayers, it's Joyce showing off a lot, which I think is it stops me a little bit from fully appreciating it, because it is that I keep being inundated with clips now of everything on my phone, knowing that I'm searching Joyce things all the time. So it clearly thinks I want Joyce things all the time. So it's just I keep getting the same quote from Virginia Woolf saying it's like a very smart kid in a classroom who knows how smart they are, and then the ego is being driven by that.
Yeah, I mean, this novel is an iceberg, isn't it?
Yeah, how smart he is.
Yeah.
But there are moments in it where they're breathtaking to me. Like there are moments, but you have to go through so much to get to those moments.
Oh yes.
Like the end of this episode, I loved the scene of Stephen curling up in a fetal position and trying to recite the song that he sang to his mother, and Bloom standing over him. And we're told he stands erect, and he gets the vision of his son, and he looks at it with what are we told? Wonderstruck, He's almost like rewarded with this. I thought this was breathtaking, but I slogged through an awful lot to get to this.
146 pages to get there.
For him to feel like a father to Stephen, and to get his son to come back in a dream, or a hallucination or whatever, and it's not a haunting or frightening.
No, it was quite joyous, wasn't it?
Yes, like that. I wanted to cheer, but oh my God, what we went through to get to it.
I also got the impression at the end of this episode that, okay, you've made it past the tough bit, and now it's going to be plain sailing. That's what the end of the episode made me think. I'm quite looking forward to the next 3 episodes that we've got.
Speaking of the next episodes, because I think we're sort of wrapping it up, 15.
Yeah.
You do want to continue with our discussions?
Oh, I do.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe one more.
What I was going to mention is that I am going to a lake house, not next weekend, but the weekend after. So definitely not coming on. So
okay, we'll have to postpone it then.
But the weekend after that, we will have wrapped it all up.
That is my question. Do you want to do one last discussion for this part of the book? Like the chapters, what is it, 15 or is it 16, 17?
16, yeah, because they're quite short, aren't they?
Definitely.
Yeah.
They're shorter than this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you're ready to. It's like you're done already, Greg.
So maybe we do one last wrap up.
One last wrap up.
Yeah, I think so.
July.
Oh, okay. I mean, if you want. I mean, the last time I read this was in 2020, and even I'm getting just seriously, I got so much out of rereading it again. But
I'm kind of enjoying it, I mean, you're right about you come across parts that are really great. Like there's a section where it's Elijah speaking like an evangelical preacher, and it's just hilarious and brilliant. But that's just one little routine.
It's coming. We haven't. That's the first time that came up, and that's something that's been a thread throughout Ulysses.
Yeah. I quite like the way it all ties together and those sort of patterns.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a bit like to me it's a bit like, is it a good novel? Well, it's a good novel the way a cubist painting can be a good painting. It's it's exploded everything, so you're seeing it from all the sides in the same time. Which I think you just have to kind of absorb it and see what happens, really.
I think that's probably the best explanation of it. It's like treat like modern art in that sense.
Right.
Sometimes you are impressed by it, but then sometimes you are also looking at what's his name.
Alex.
It's no, because that's very down to you to interpret, isn't it? Because there's arguably no form to it. But there's a British artist who does he puts a shark in a tank of formaldehyde, and that's
like
Damien Hirst.
Yeah. Where I think
Yeah.
okay, but this to me is you've also just shown me a tin of Campbell's soup, and I'm not meant to. I personally don't get anything from that. I don't see where the art lies, or just putting a urinal in the middle of a room. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're making me do a lot of heavy lifting here as the recipient of whatever the medium is in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can appreciate that. It is very.
Yeah, I think with this book, it's all in the reading. It's the like you say, you have to work, and it's the process of us reading it.
It is. And
it's not
honestly,
somebody sat down and thought, let's entertain everybody by writing a.
Even though I read from the audiobook by itself, and really, I don't recommend just listening to the audiobook. It really did not. But to fully grasp this, I would have to sit down again and really sit. This time, I want to read it super slow. Just not even 2 months is really too quick. I know when we first did this, Alan said, "No, let's do it in a month." And now I'm thinking this should have been a 3 to 4 month book.
I'm not sure I could have done it in a month unless I would, because I'm not sure I could read it exclusively and not read anything else.
That's why I'm saying is like, it's like just go for this really slow. And not,
I have read this exclusively, so I've not picked up anything else at all during the entire time with this because I spent so much time going back over certain bits again. Because I like Greg has said, there are chunks of this which are just text that I am mechanically reading at certain points because it's 50 plus lines of various saints throughout history that don't seem to have any context within this section necessarily.
Yeah.
So I just have to read it as a block and then maybe go back and think on it and let it gestate for a moment and think, what am I meant to get from this that ties it into Bloom buying sausages in a shop or whatever it is. It's just that I don't know how to connect the two things together where it's relatively mundane life activities of going to a funeral. I know it's emotionally deep and stuff like that, but there's nothing exciting going on in the life with the exception of maybe the events of him and Gertie on the beach. That's the most exciting or thrilling thing that's happened. The rest of it is just...
Well, he lost his potato.
Yeah.
Yeah. How long has he been carrying this potato about for? Why hasn't it grown eyes and gone mouldy and everything else?
Well, he's also got a bar of lemon soap in there.
Yeah, but only since this morning. He only bought the lemon soap this morning.
Oh.
All right.
Well, he does demand that she give him the potato back.
He does.
So
yeah.
Did she have the potato to begin? Did she even have it to begin with? That's the question.
Well, this could have been part of the fantasy.
Maybe you goes beyond the eye stage if you keep one for long enough.
Maybe. They don't do that in my vegetable rack though. They just sort of disintegrate and die.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So
I think we're just about an hour. I think we should cut it.
Yeah.
I will post this tomorrow. See if anyone really starts following it. Who knows? It's for posterity, and it's really just for us to say we're digging in and understanding this book. Just a little. Okay.
Great.
I'm gonna call that tonight.
Cheers, guys.